Quiet Connection is proud to be affiliated with the Blue Dot Project through Postpartum Support International. As an ambassador, I am dedicated to promoting perinatal mental health awareness, spreading the blue dot as a symbol of support and solidarity, and ending the stigma and shame. The blue dot is a universal symbol for perinatal mental health and is owned by the community. That means you. Anyone can use it. You'll notice a blue dot on all of Quiet Connection's social media accounts. To learn more, visit thebluedotproject.org. Welcome to Quiet Connection, a podcast dedicated to ending the stigma around perinatal mental health. I'm Chelsea. Today, I'm sitting down with Caralyn. She's here to share her incredibly personal and courageous journey through trauma, resilience, and straight into her parenting life. She's a mother, survivor, and a fierce advocate for mental health and breaking generational cycles. Prepare yourself as this conversation touches on some heavy but vital topics, including sexual assault, domestic abuse, and pregnancy loss. We'll jump right in and let Caralyn tell her story in her words. Hello, today I'm here with Caralyn. Caralyn, how are you?
Hi, I am well. How are you?
I am a little frazzled on a Friday morning, but we're doing our best. We're gonna power through. We're moms. That's what we do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Caralyn, I'm excited to finally get to sit down with you. It takes a while, man. With a lot of my guests, it takes a while to finally get to meet you. But oh boy, I remember all of you and I look forward to meeting all of you. And I've been really looking forward to sitting down with you. So this is exciting for me.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. Well, we'll just jump right in with both feet. Could you tell me a little bit about yourself and who you were before starting your parenting journey?
Well, I'm Carolyn, obviously. I'm a mom. Before I was a mom, however, I grew up in a small town. I'm an adoptee, so I was adopted. So that brings like a little interesting layer to the whole journey of motherhood for sure. For the most part, had a typical childhood. I did deal with some bullying growing up. I definitely struggled already. We'll say adolescent age with like depression and anxiety. But at that time, you kind of just chalk it up to like adolescent moodiness, that type of thing. But I know for certain now in hindsight, it was like a lot deeper than that. Obviously, I grew up in a predominantly white town. There was the racial aspect that really weighed heavy on me. For the most part, I was treated with kindness and acceptance, but I did experience uh, being called the N word, things of that nature. Right off the bat, I just kind of, my identity was a little bit off kilter, I guess, if that's the way to put it, just with all these little factors. And then I'm a survivor of trauma. Also, I was sexually assaulted in college. I had my first abusive relationship. I believe I was 20. And that was a physically abusive relationship, definitely verbally, psychologically, emotionally. This individual was very controlling. Looking back at it, I do wonder if it was narcissistic abuse. Just with some of the things that were done to me, I was defecated on in this
Mm.
relationship. I'm trying to use a scientific term, but somebody
Yeah.
pooped on me, just to break
Yeah.
things down simply. So there's that. He put his hands on me once, pushed me down in a parking lot also in addition to that. He ended up breaking up with me actually, which was the best thing ever. It was my sort of chapter of independence after that. I got my own place. I was ripping and running, going to college, working, and then like 20s and 30s, just kind of like living life. But the depression and anxiety obviously got worse as I got older because I had experienced trauma
Mhm.
and I had attempted suicide. Probably, I want to say it was like 7 or 8 months after the sexual assault. In addition to that, I had almost died of alcohol poisoning because I had started self-medicating with alcohol because I did not ever go to therapy for any of these things.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
miracle, honestly, that I'm okay now. I don't promote self-healing, by the way, for really, really, really serious things. It's possible, but I don't wanna be out here necessarily advocating for that. I could have probably foregone, like, a lot of things had I gone to therapy after all these things. So there's pretty much that, just being a survivor of trauma, and honestly, looking back, I spent a good portion of my life living in survival mode because all of these things happened pretty much consecutively. I maybe had a couple years in between where things like weren't too crazy, but it was like after I started healing from one thing and thinking I'm good, something else happens. It was just a lifetime of survival mode, really, which now explains like a lot of things.
Yeah. And I I appreciate you being so candid and so vulnerable in sharing all of that.
Yeah.
It's so important. It's so important, but you don't owe it to anybody either. So,
No, absolutely
no.
not.
Right? So
Absolutely not.
I appreciate you sharing it, and it does inform a lot of your journey ahead, I'm sure. So knowing you have a history with mental health, knowing you did not have the support that you needed, was mental health something that was even talked about within your family, or did you kind of feel like you were fending for yourself?
I Okay, so my impression of mental health growing up was basically I equated that purely just with like mental illness. I
Mm,
didn't look at it from the aspect of like mental health is like physical health. You have to eat properly, you have to sleep, you have to have healthy habits. I really equated mental health with specifically mental illness. And so it wasn't really talked about in our household. I know probably the depressive side of me was viewed as me being dramatic or moody or being too
mhm.
sensitive. Yeah, so
That
right
resonates,
off
yeah.
yes, like the stigmatization, that's a mouthful this early, but the stigma already was like there when I was growing up. So no, it wasn't talked about. And in fact, we were not really like a let's get in touch with our feelings type of family. And that's because my parents weren't raised that way. And the reason I do bring up so much of my past on this episode is also to speak to the importance of breaking those generational cycles because my parents, knowing their background, they definitely had trauma, hands down. And I absolutely believe that the reason or because they weren't able to maybe heal from that or even recognize it really affected the way I was brought up in terms of emotions and
Mhm.
mental health. So to answer your question, it wasn't framed as mental health, I guess. It was just framed as like personality traits, if that makes
Mhm.
any sense. Yeah.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. I
Yeah.
think, and again, like I'm not gonna try to guess like your parents' generation, but it is really interesting now, I think, becoming parents ourselves as well and realizing what it takes and what it takes out of us. We sort of can look in retrospect and be like, "Oh, my parents didn't have that to give." And right?
Absolutely.
and no one was supporting them, no one was talking about it, and, like, I'm
Yeah.
feeling these things, and like you said, being cycle breakers, I feel like this generation of parents we're becoming the cycle breakers because we are talking
Yeah.
about it, we are being loud
Yeah.
about it, but rather than go down a rabbit hole, because I could do that for days, um, I'm curious, like, because your your early adult life and your teen life, it was kind of fraught with trauma and confusion and identity, um, just I won't say identity crises, but, like, identity confusion even.
Yeah.
Um, was motherhood ever something you really thought about in, like, deeply at all?
Absolutely, but you wanna know something? I think that I looked at motherhood as something that I was supposed to be doing, you know what I'm saying? As, like, the next phase
Yeah.
when you're an adult, and I did. I, at one time, thought I wanted 2 girls and 2 boys after having 1 child. I'm glad I don't think I would have made it through labor of multiple children. But, yeah, I think the adoption aspect too, I had in my head, like, this mental picture of, like, one day I will have my own biological family. I'll have my
Mm,
husband, our kids will be biologically related to us. So I think from that aspect, like, the biological part of a family was, like, extremely important to me at that time. But that changed, when I was in my 30s and I wasn't really getting it right with the dating situation. I came to a resolution that maybe I won't have children, and I'm gonna be okay with that because, society puts so much pressure in families and culture and stuff to you should have kids, you should have a family, you should this, you should that, but that's not always in the cards for everyone.
yeah.
So it definitely changed, and certainly when I went through the traumas and stuff like that, that definitely didn't change my mind about wanting a family. Certainly, it wasn't a priority at that time, but it didn't having been in abusive relationships didn't deter me from believing that I could have a happy, healthy life with a family.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that again, like, that's a really important distinction to make too. Um, that your trauma doesn't define you. And maybe even in those moments too, like, first you can speak to this as well, but when you're in those types of relationships, typically you don't see them for what they are, right? So motherhood is this thing that's sort of tethering you, like, I'm supposed to be doing this despite
Yeah.
despite everything. But your journey to motherhood didn't quite go according to plan either.
No, it did not. I was around 32 or 33. I was in a serious relationship with a guy that we had gone to college together. I relocated to Florida because that's where he was stationed. He had been in the Marines at the time, and we were going to get married and all these things, and I got pregnant. And so I was excited. I was a little worried because we weren't maybe, like, stable in terms of, like, future planning for that. Because it was not unplanned, but it wasn't like we sat down with calendars and things of that
Yeah.
nature, so so I got pregnant, and I made it to about, oh gosh, I for sure made it through the first month, and I don't remember. My memory's not very well, but I miscarried. And I
Mhm.
actually miscarried at home. I didn't really know what was going on. I had really, really bad cramping. I had bleeding. I feel like I went to the doctor before that. I don't remember if I had, like, spotting, and they just said to be careful, or because it was so early, I don't know that it was too concerning, but I ended up, um, passing the fetus. I have this is the first time I'm publicly sharing this, and I want to. It's not challenging at all, but I want to because I know there's other people out here who can relate. But I passed the fetus and I flushed the toilet. Like, I like who how no one gives you like a manual for like what do you do when
No.
these things happen? And I told my boyfriend and we went to the hospital, we went to the emergency room, they cleaned everything else out. Yeah, I went home and I think I was just in shock. I really was in shock. I still am honestly talking about it now. I'm still kind of in shock about the whole thing. And I remember the next morning just waking up feeling so empty. I
Mm.
don't even know how to like really fully describe it. I guess you had somebody growing inside of you, for those weeks or whatnot. And then the next thing you know, there's nothing there. And my boyfriend actually got me a dog, and pets are the best therapy. I'm telling you what, if I would not have had that dog to take care of, I don't even know like what
Yeah.
I don't even know what I would have done. Um and I think somebody actually recommended that to him. Like, maybe you can get her a pet or something so she can, it helps you heal. But I did not go to counseling for that. If this has ever happened to you, I would highly recommend if you feel comfortable that you go to counseling. I'm sure that that stuff still probably comes up later now as like unprocessed grief, I'm sure.
Mhm.
And so I just kind of carried on with life. And as a matter of fact, days after that miscarriage, I took my final exam for my master's.
My goodness.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
and this is why I speak to living in survival mode. I mean, there's no reason I would have been able to do that but for survival mode. And because of like the emotional unavailability of my parents, I really did learn to become a high functioning person when it came to mental health, or someone dies the next day I'm up and moving like nothing happened. Like I really learned how to be that way. And so I took the exam, life went on. I actually got pregnant again. I miscarried again. This time it was much earlier. Um, and that was the second time in life that I had very, very, very serious suicidal ideations. The first time I had written a note and done all that stuff. This time it was more like I went outside. I was going to drive my car into a pond.
Mhm.
Um, and I just, at this point, I had survived a sexual assault. I had been in an abusive relationship. I was still processing stuff from childhood, still processing the first miscarriage. And at this point, I was just like, I don't even know how I can carry on in life anymore. Thank God I had the wherewithal to call a friend, having experienced something like that before, and they helped me reconcile things and process. But again, I did not go to therapy for that and just continued on with life. And I think it was at that point also that, again, I kind of told myself maybe it's just not in the cards for me to have a child. I was
Right.
never really given clear answers for the causes of the miscarriages, which is pretty typical. But I was reading an article recently about how women can store trauma in your uterus and stuff like that, and I really do wonder if that had something to do with it.
Yeah, there's
I don't
this
know.
whole
There
there's a
is.
whole there's a book that I have yet to read but has been recommended to me several times. The Body
Yeah.
Keeps the Score, I think, or The Body Holds the Score.
Yeah, I have yet to read that too.
Yeah, and again, like you said, you'll probably never definitively know why
Right.
these things
Yep.
happened, but I do believe that your body does hold on to trauma.
Do too.
Yeah, and you certainly went through some incredibly challenging situations. Challenging is such a small word, but the situations that you found yourself in are beyond what a lot of people can imagine. And I want to acknowledge like your courage and your strength in being vulnerable and sharing about your losses, especially when you noted that, like, there's no manual for this. No one tells you
Yeah.
what to do. Like, I didn't know what to do. I and you're absolutely right. And, I have not experienced loss personally, but I've spoken to so many families at this point who have, and so many of them say the same thing, especially when it's an early loss. They're like, "Well, what do you do?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to go to the doctor? Am I supposed to bring the fetus with me? But, like, what
Right.
is supposed to happen?" And I think it's because we don't talk about it. We're not talking
Absolutely.
about it.
Yeah.
You said so the second time around when you were making a plan, you were making a plan for suicide, you did reach out to somebody. When you experienced that first loss, did you speak to, like, your parents? Did you speak to anyone about it?
I honestly, I feel like I probably talked about it, but I don't think it was to the extent of crying and getting someone consoling me and things of that
Mhm.
nature. So I would say no, not really, not beyond. Honestly, I maybe really didn't speak to anybody about it. I don't know. It was such a long time ago, but I know it was not to the extent that I felt like I could start healing from it. I really think it was something that I just, well, let me just, toss that in the bag of traumas and crappy things, and we'll just keep carrying all this stuff along.
Yeah.
No, I did not talk about it nearly enough, but I think I had so much, shame with having
Mm.
flushed a fetus down the toilet.
Mhm.
I still see it. If I close my eyes right now, I can see it clear as day.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that image ever. I really won't. Um, but no, if you are listening, talk about these things with somebody, please, 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 because not everyone's as fortunate as me. I could have had someone not pick up the phone
Mhm.
or who knows what, or I could have decided to not call anybody at all and just end everything.
Mhm.
It's just, I hope people get from this episode that you can overcome. You might not move on to the life that you wanted, but there's hope.
Yeah.
Try I've walked through hell a number of times, and there's hope.
Yeah.
It's possible, it's possible. Yeah.
There are so many things that are resonating with me, and I wanna make note of them because, like you said, they're so stigmatized. So, like, I do this exact same thing. Like, when I speak about my past traumas, it's almost nonchalant, and it can come off that way to someone who doesn't know you or who hasn't experienced trauma on their own, you know? Um, but I almost feel like exactly like what you said, like, okay, I just chalk that up to another thing.
Yeah.
Like, you get to a point in your life where you just expect bad things to happen.
Yes.
Right? So even and you're like, "Yep, I had a miscarriage and I was being abused and I was defecated on," and, like, yeah, like, just add it to the list, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But what's so important is recognizing, I mean, the culmination of all of those things is so much to carry, but everybody's carrying something, and it's okay.
Yes.
It's okay to talk
Yes.
about it. It's
Yes.
okay to talk about it. The other thing that I also wanna note and why I think it is, I mean, it's so vulnerability is strength. That's kind of my, like, catchphrase, but another reason that I especially appreciate you being so open and vulnerable about your experiences with loss is the culture that we're in right now. It's really scary in our country to share details like that because depending on where you live, you don't know your own safety. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um and it has to be okay to talk about these things. It has to be okay to share these things.
Mhm.
Otherwise, just like you, there's going to be someone sitting at home who has gone through the exact same thing, sitting in their bathroom, probably sitting on the bathroom floor
Mhm.
and saying, "What do I do now?"
Yeah.
What do I do now? And it doesn't mean we have the answers. It doesn't mean
Right.
that we know, like,
Yeah.
okay, well, this is what's gonna make you feel better. But just like you
Right.
were saying, Carolyn, speaking about it, and I do appreciate that you are advocating for seeking help from, like, a therapist or someone. What do you think held you back from doing that?
I think just a pattern of knowing I can push on through life without having to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I went to a like pre-counseling after the sexual assault. It was basically just to meet the person. I never returned.
Mm.
After the abusive relationship, it's like trauma sickens us in terms of making us feel like everything has to be a secret.
Mhm.
And so I think it was just another, oh, well, I know I can make it. I made it through all these other things. So why do I need to go talk to a stranger about it? And I think also it was the thought of having to rehash everything. And
Mhm.
I just I after I was sexually assaulted, I did not file a police report. My parents didn't even know about it. Um, I just decided at that point in life that when hard things happen to me, I'm going to power through it. I'm going to feel the feels and do what I got to do, but I have to keep pushing on in life. Nobody can know that these things have happened to me because then they're going to judge me. And if, as long as I just keep it to myself, I'll judge myself. I can do that all day long, but I can't
Same
stand for
here.
someone else. I don't want someone else judging me. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep it in. And I had kind of developed like an early distrust when it came to sharing my feelings because of some adverse reactions I got from my mom. I just kind of developed this sense of like hyper independence, trust no one,
Mm.
that type of thing. And it's interesting because I have my master's in forensic psychology. So clearly I know the benefits of therapy and counseling, which
Isn't it
makes it
funny
all the
how
more
many of us
strange.
Isn't it funny how many of us end
Yeah.
up in these fields where, like,
Yes.
I think it almost, this is just my, like, personal take it or leave it, but, like, I feel like it stems from us trying to understand, like, we need an understanding of
Bingo.
it. Yeah.
You are right. You are so
Yeah.
right. And I remember high school was when I fell in love with psychology because at the time I was grieving my grandmother dying. I was dealing with an eating disorder and all these things. But being in psychology class, I could have a front row seat to why I was going through the things that I was and all of that stuff. So you're absolutely right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah. Um, I would never know, speaking to you today, that you struggled with sharing so openly, because you're doing an absolutely beautiful job of walking us
Thank you.
through some really, really dark times for you. I'm curious when the shift happened, or it may not have, like, when you did finally get pregnant, you have a son. What was that experience? Was there fear associated with it? Was that, like, walk me through that?
That experience was not good. Um,
Okay.
so, okay. So after I dated the guy in the Marines, we eventually broke up, obviously. We're still great friends, but I jumped right into another relationship without giving myself time to be alone. And I met my son's father on an online dating app. Ladies, gentlemen, please don't necessarily use those avenues for a life partner or a co-parent. I'm sure there's many success stories. However, I think those are in the minority.
Mhm.
So I met my son's father. Right off the bat, he seemed like a nice enough guy. He was really nice, really sweet. Um, and we started dating. I think I moved in with him like really quickly. I've always been one of those people like, let's just go for it. Let's wing it. You know what I mean? Not really
Yeah.
thinking about the consequences. So
Yeah.
we moved in together. We had been dating. not long. I want to say we'd only been dating for maybe like 5 or 6 months before I got pregnant.
Mm.
But I it wasn't like, again, it wasn't necessarily like a surprise. We had talked about having kids. I would say also, you should definitely get to know somebody over time before making these decisions. But I got pregnant. Before I got pregnant, I started noticing very concerning behaviors from my son's father. He was very extremely controlling, was constantly accusing me of like cheating on him. He was very verbally abusive. Now, it wasn't at the climax to where when I got pregnant, I was necessarily worried about it. Because I
Mhm.
think at that stage, like the behaviors were like intermittent, or I was just in denial about the situation. So I got pregnant, and then around 6 months, I started spotting. And given my
Mm.
history, I immediately went to the hospital this time. um, I went to the emergency room, so they couldn't do much but just tell me to be on bed rest, make an appointment with your doctor, which I did. I went into the doctor and she let me know that your hormone levels are not where they should be. I'm recommending that you take some hormones. Well, I
Okay.
was on Medicaid. They did not cover that. My
Oh.
abusive boyfriend obviously was not, my biggest supporter, and he didn't even offer to like, let's try to figure out how we can pay for this. So I literally was sent home and literally had to give it to God. I had nothing, there was nothing else I could do.
Yeah.
Nothing. I was terrified. Um because I was pretty certain I was going to miscarry because I'd already done it twice. So I called my
Mhm.
family, a couple of friends, let them know what's going on, and just did the best I could for the remainder of the pregnancy to be as stress free as possible, which was impossible being in an abusive relationship. My son's father would call me at work and just like hound me on the phone during lunch breaks. I would return from my lunch breaks in tears,
Mm.
just stressed like to the max. I'm like, what am I going to do? And I wanted to make things work because I never envisioned myself being a single parent. I knew I could, but that's not how I grew up, and I didn't want to raise my child that way. But I also had the wherewithal to know that this is not going to be a safe situation for myself or a child. I had to have been maybe 7, 8 months pregnant, and I created a safety plan
Mm.
to exit this relationship. And while he was out doing something one night, he had another child from another relationship who lived with us. He was in the shower. I quickly packed up as much as I could while I'm pregnant, went downstairs, packed up my car, and then the next morning, I left for work as usual. I sent him a long message, and the rest is kind of pretty much history. I delivered my son a day early. I worked up until the day I was going to actually go into work when I was having contractions,
Oh my
because I
gosh.
was like, oh, well, I got to go, because I'm like, I'm a single parent now. I have to go to work. But
Yeah.
obviously, someone's like, no, Carolyn, you can't do that. They're like, go to the hospital. And thank God I did, because I was dilated enough that he was coming soon. But my son's father was not there, and I was surrounded by friends and stuff, and my son was born. The first night home, I sat on the floor of my apartment. I didn't have a lot of furniture at the time, and literally was like, what the hell do I do now? I mean, I knew
Yeah.
how to be a parent and take care of a kid. I worked in childcare for like 10 years. I wasn't like an idiot when it came to kids, but it's like, this is my kid. I'm not sending it
Mhm.
home with somebody else. Like, this is my kid. And I was like survival mode to the max by the time my son was born, because I hadn't even begun to deal with the abusive relationship the next one I had found myself in. And I can remember people ask me, well, where is he going to go to preschool and what's he going to do about this? And I would get so overwhelmed because I'm like, dude, I'm trying to figure out the next few hours. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
what the heck he's going to do in 3 or 4 years from now. And my son's father put me through post-separation abuse.
Ugh.
He yeah, he filed false allegations against me, claiming that I was inappropriate with the child who lived with us. So
Yeah.
much so that the police got involved. I had a detective come to my house, child services came to my house, and he was alleging that my son was possibly the product of me being inappropriate with his half brother.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Talk about control.
It was horrible. It was awful. I had my son on my leg when the detective was there. She's swabbing us for DNA. And to this day, it's not a closed case because I basically now clearly they know he was lying, but for me to close a case, I have to produce evidence, saying that I didn't do these things. So
Yeah.
that's always kind of like been a dark cloud over my head. But it was the first few years of my son's life were a joy in that I enjoyed being a mom, but it was a nightmare with his father, not to mention postpartum depression on top of that. I mean,
Yeah.
that is a real thing for people out there who think postpartum depression is not real and that the severity of it is not real. You are sadly, sadly mistaken.
Yeah. There are so many risk factors and contributing factors that can increase your likelihood of developing a
Yeah.
perinatal or postpartum mental health disorder, right? And you at that point in your life were like ticking all the boxes,
Yep,
right?
check,
Like,
check, check, check.
yeah,
Yep, I need an extra page
exactly.
of paper. Check, check. Yeah.
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 We laugh, right? We laugh, otherwise we'd cry. But like
Yes.
the there's also a biological aspect to it, and you were already
Yes.
predispositioned to depression
Yeah.
and it sounds like anxiety. So it was a perfect storm for you. So
Absolutely.
I also want to highlight that you acknowledge the duality of it. Like you talk about what a joy it was to have your son and
Yeah.
to be his mom, while also acknowledging how freaking hard it was to just make it hour by hour. And
Yes.
that's all you can do sometimes. Sometimes it's minute by
Absolutely.
minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is.
What kind of support did you have? Did you have any support network to fall back on?
I did. Thank God. The place that I worked at, I had already been working there, I think, for a little over a year before I got pregnant with my son. And I had made some of the most amazing friends that actually I would consider family. And I did have support. A friend's mom watched my son while I went to work. I had another friend and her husband at the time would watch him on the weekends. People would give me rides to the grocery store if I needed. I didn't have a car, so I was
Yeah.
really reliant on other people, but people just no hesitation. What do you need? How can we help? I didn't really have to buy anything for my son when he was first born because I had such generous friends that really made sure I had everything I needed for when he came. I remember having to call friends like, I need a couple bucks for milk. I need,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Because I had a job, but that paycheck was sucked up with like rent. And because I had a job, I did not get a ton of benefits. Thank God for WIC. That's a
Yeah.
godsend. But yeah, I did have a lot of support because I've always had a strained relationship with my family, so that's never been a go-to for me. That's no
Mhm.
diss against them. It's just a personal choice. I'm very cognizant of safe spaces. And my family just hasn't always been that, and that's not their fault. It just is what it is. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I thank God for the friends that I had, and eventually at some point, I was so frazzled that I had a friend tell me, "Have you ever thought about getting on medication?" And I was like,
Mhm.
"No." And she's like, "Well, this is the doctor that I go to." And I will say, if it had not been for the antidepressants, now granted, I've already proved I can survive and be high functioning, but I had literally reached that tipping point where had it not been for that medication, I don't even know what I would have done. And it was still hard, but I could manage because you don't want to take medication necessarily to be numb to everything.
Mhm.
And I will say this also, I do wish I would have had counseling in addition to the medication because medication does help, but when you pop a pill, it is not automatically teaching you coping skills.
Exactly. Yep.
So for that, but it was a godsend. And I think I stayed on those I was on them for 2 years, got off of them, got back on them later again. But for anybody that, suffer, you have these stigmas with medications and all these things, if it's something that's going to help you, look into it. But look into
Yeah.
it because it's not always the answer for everyone. But yeah, those were some really rough years, but I remember very vividly I was having a hard time one day and I was laying on the couch and my son was a toddler. And for an instant, I looked at the situation through his eyes and I was like, I don't want him to grow up regaling tales of how, oh, my mom was just always sad and she always laid around and our house was always a mess. And look, if this is your life, there's no judgment there. I'm not judging at all. I get through cycles of that myself. But for your children's sake and for the narrative that we begin writing for our children, if you need to go get help or just even if you talk to somebody, please do that. We have to give our kids the best shot that we possibly can. And with my son's father in that situation, he doesn't know his dad. It's actually
Mhm.
not safe for that to be that way. I have a family violence protection order on my child support case where I live. I had to fight to get that. And thank God I'm in a state that recognizes the seriousness of things like that because I wasn't even able to get a restraining order against him at one point in time years back. But for the sake of our kids, we've got to address our mental health. We just have to. And I appreciate your podcast and the space that you provide because mental health, around parenting and all that stuff, we have to talk about these things or we're going to keep raising generations of parents who are in survival mode.
Mhm.
And we're
And
eventually going to
there's
have a whole planet of survival mode people.
yes. And it's not to say too, like I try to reiterate, like there will be moments, there will be seasons where you are in survival mode.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
doesn't mean that's a chapter. It's not your whole story. It
Yep.
doesn't have to be your whole
Yeah,
story. And you're so
absolutely.
right. The stigma around medication, and I myself am still on a medication journey and I advocate for like speak to your doctor if this is something. But what I say
Yes.
always is it's a tool. It's a tool to help you regulate enough to access coping skills. And just like you said,
Yes.
connecting medication with therapy, that's like that would be like chef's kiss. But
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
all you can do is one or the other, or if all you can do is just like you did that one day, reach out to a friend and say, I'm not
Yeah.
okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to say I'm not okay. Um,
Absolutely.
and you reiterated so much like we have to do this for our children. And, you know,
Yeah.
I think maybe you don't give yourself enough credit for you also did it for you. You
Yeah.
do have
Yeah.
you have this like you say this pattern in your life of like all right, I'm just going to pick myself up and start again and I'm going to pick myself up and
Yeah.
start again and you did. Um but you made those decisions for your son, and in doing so, you also made those decisions to protect yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I get now why so many parents say having a child like saved their life.
Mm.
Because for me, it forced me to know that I need to take care of myself. Now, if I'm single, no kids, and I want to run my life into the ground and all these things, that's fine. But it's like when you have someone you have to take care of, you hopefully start to realize how much you have to take care of yourself
Yeah.
because I have post traumatic stress and all that, sometimes my patience can wear thin. But if I don't recognize, I'm going to be shouting at my child all the time and they're going to just get the brunt of everything.
Mhm.
So, yes, I don't give myself enough credit for having done these things for myself. Absolutely. I'm working on
Yeah.
it. Maybe by the time I'm
Well, it's
80, I'll
not
get there. No, I know.
it's
I'm
not
just teasing.
it's not a judgment at all. It's more of
No, I
like
know.
I wanna empower you a little bit because
I
just hearing
know.
you
I
speak
appreciate
about
it.
this, yeah, hearing you speak about your journey, again, a lot of it resonates and for reasons that are personal to me, but I I know that at the end of the day, if you don't choose you, then you can't choose your child.
Yes,
You can't choose your child.
absolutely.
And I'm not sure, how old is your son now?
He's 10.
He's 10. I have a 10-year-old
Yeah.
too. Oh my
Oh, they're
goodness.
so
I have a
fun.
Oh, it's the pre-hormonal,
Yeah.
everything is yeah, it's fun times at my house, but I'm curious, are you open with him about not
Mhm.
necessarily maybe what you went through, but in terms of like, "Yeah, mom, I'm having a really tricky mental health day,"
Yes.
or like, do you talk about those sort of things?
Yes, absolutely. Because my son, I mean, kids know. They know when you're off. They know when
Mhm.
something and I never want him to think that me being off is him, like, that he's done something. But yeah, what I don't do it so much now, but when I was really a single parent and on my own, I would have to tell him, like, "Look, buddy, mom's having kind of a sad day today, so this is just what's going on." And yeah, I'm very open and honest with him. And I, ad nauseum, try to teach him that it's okay to have your feelings. Like, if
Mhm.
he cries because I took something away, I'm not going to take the tears away from you. I always tell him, you're allowed to feel sad about it, but, we have to do X, Y, and Z. But I'm very cognizant for him to be aware of what mental health is, um, and things like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I try to be authentic with him. He knows the situation with his father. I don't talk negatively about his father to him, of course. But he knows it's not safe for us to be around him.
Mhm.
And I tell him too, if when you get older, if you want to be able to talk about these things with someone and it can't be me, please tell me because I have no problems having him go to a therapist. I
Yeah.
wish my parents would have had a little more education about me going to therapy is not an indication that you're a sucky parent necessarily. The
Mhm.
stuff I was going through had really nothing to do with my parents. I was sad about my grandma. I had a number of classmates die in car accidents growing up because of where I
Mm.
lived. There was so many things that had nothing to do with them. But as parents, and I get it, I'm a parent, it's easy to take things personally and put things on yourself. But I think we just need to keep having these conversations for ourselves, but also so that when our kids grow up, they are having these conversations with their kids.
Yeah. Do you find that he communicates with you about how he's feeling? Like, that you're a safe space for him?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I really work on my reactions because
Mm.
I never want to give him a reaction that he thinks, "Oh, I can't talk to her about stuff like that."
Mhm.
Because that's like and just letting him know that no matter what it is, we're gonna figure it out, but just, oh, and I have to pry sometimes when I'm trying to keep that dialogue open because I know it's going to slip away the older he gets. And I just want him to know you can always come to your mom, no matter what it is, you can always come to me.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just my daughter, I don't know if it's the age, but, there and again, like, we are into psychology. I don't know if it's a nature versus nurture thing, but there seems to be this inherent, like, worry, at least on my daughter's part. She talks feelings are it's just like talking about the weather at our house.
Yeah,
we're
same.
I'm having a hard day today, but, like, she will say, like, "I don't wanna be in trouble." Like, it's for some things, "I don't wanna be in trouble." And I have to
Yeah.
say, like, "Well, what does that mean to you?" It's like, we've
Yeah.
never and again, this is a personal parenting style thing, but, like, I'm like,
Yeah.
"We don't You've never been grounded, you we don't yell at you." I mean, obviously, we yell, sometimes you can't control it, but, like, what does "in trouble" mean to you? Because I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you're afraid of. And I don't know if your son does that. Her explanation of it is like, "I don't want you to be disappointed in me."
Same.
And
That's what my
yeah.
son says, or that I don't
Yeah.
love him anymore. He thinks if I'm upset, I just
Yeah.
stop loving him. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is I
Yep.
think that's, again, why it's so important to be like, "Well, like, just because I have feelings, like, I'm not." And then okay, I'm gonna
Yes.
pause right here and say this took me until I'm almost 37, and it has taken me this long to realize I'm not in trouble for having feelings, right? Like, just like you were saying
Yeah.
when you were younger, like, we were called
Yeah.
moody, we were called sensitive. So I
Yeah.
guess I understand it to a degree of like, well, if I have feelings, then someone's gonna be mad at me or I'm gonna be in trouble, but yeah, I just that was a rabbit hole. I told you I always find them.
No,
But,
that's a good one though. Cause you gotta make that distinction with them. And I also just the other day told my son, my frustration is my frustration. That
mhm,
is not any indication of how you need to choose to feel. And I
mhm,
always remind him I'm upset with situations and circumstances, not with the little boy that's standing in front of me.
mhm.
You really gotta be engaged in this parenting process, man. You really do.
Yeah. Well, and it wasn't modeled for us, for so many of us. I mean,
Right, that's true. That's true.
some people had that hallmark childhood, and
Yeah,
boy,
yeah,
boy, do I wish I understood what that was like. But for many of us, it wasn't modeled for us. It wasn't modeled for
yeah.
our parents. But just like you're saying, like, we are breaking the cycle by and it's by talking about it. It's by talking
Yeah,
about how we're
simple.
feeling. Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds simple. Sounds
Yeah, right,
simple.
until 5 minutes in, it's like,
It's like, "Oh my god, please stop screaming at me." But yeah, so, I mean, there's so much, and I'm sure there is so much more. We kind of, like, glazed right over your son's, like,
Yeah,
early childhood and whatnot, but I
yeah,
just I wanna, like, take a moment and just acknowledge, like, the things that you have endured. You Again, I'm just meeting you, but you make it very clear that that does not define you. That is not your whole story. You fought for safety for yourself and for your child. And I am so grateful that you chose this space to speak about some things that you said you'd never spoken about before.
yeah,
Because, I mean, I hope that it makes it a little easier to maybe talk about it the next time or talk about it to
it
someone
will,
else. Yeah,
it
but
really
I'm
will.
also thankful because I know that there's someone out there right now that's like, "Okay, Carolyn talked about it. I can talk about it." Right?
Yep,
So, I just I sincerely appreciate your vulnerability. Every Like I said, every now and then, like, you just meet someone who's like, "Well, I'm not really like I don't like to share a lot." You just gave me so much of yourself, and I'm holding space for that, and I see you, and I hope that you feel that.
I do.
I just yeah, I'm also having a mom brain moment where all the tabs close down in my brain at once, so this is me this
I
is me
hate when that
trying to, like,
happens.
oh, it happens to me so much. I usually edit it out, and I'm trying not to because it's so relatable. But yeah, it's like when you're mid-sentence and then, like, your brain just shuts down, that's fun.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
but I guess, like, to bring us home, to bring us all the way back around, I so admire the strength in your vulnerability, and I'm so glad that we were able to talk today, finally.
I
Like,
know.
I
I
know
know.
I say face to face, it is technically face to face, but and if my listeners want to connect with you, is there a way that you would prefer that to happen? Is there a way that they can kind of follow your journey?
Yeah, I'm literally everywhere. I'm on Blue Sky, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I'm a
Girl, how do
blogger.
you do that? How do you I can barely juggle my social media and it's mostly Meta. So, I don't know how you do it.
Survival mode. It's
Yeah.
it's it's something I'm working on. Actually, I have like severe it's a trauma response, the busybody syndrome. It's a
Oh,
real
I
thing
get
and
that.
this is why.
Mhm.
I also blog. So I'm on Medium and Substack, and then I have my own mental health blog. And any profile you visit, all this information is on there. And if you just honestly type Caralyn Dreyer in Google, it'll pull up whatever you might want to know.
Perfect. It'll be linked in the show notes too, all of your social media handles. I follow you, and it's yeah, like I said, I can barely keep up with Threads and Blue Sky and Instagram and YouTube, and so props to you. Now I'm trying Substack. Now I'm gonna have to follow you on Substack if I'm not already. I'm
Yeah.
giving it a
I'll f
try. We're seeing how it goes, but yeah, so that'll be linked in the show notes so that people can follow your journey and maybe reach out if this episode resonated with them. But now I have a challenge for you.
Really?
I know, I've started ending my episodes a little differently. I'm hearkening back to my millennial roots. So back in the days before like cell phones and we couldn't just be reached all the time. And if you wanted to talk to someone, you had to leave an actual message on like a voicemail, like an answering machine.
Yeah.
So you don't know anything about my next guest. You don't know who they are. You don't know their story. But you called into Quiet Connection today and they weren't here to answer. And you can interpret this however you want to. But if you were to leave them a message, what would that message be?
Mm. That message would be that your past does not have to define you, nor do the perspectives or how other people view your journey or the choices that you make for how you heal. Whatever you choose, like it's okay, and you're worthy of taking care of yourself and doing whatever it takes to be your best self, whether that's mental health, physical health, whatever it is. And just know that hope is a real thing. It's a real thing and it's there. And it's just always there. No matter it's in your darkest time, hope is always there underneath the surface. And you can end up living a life that makes you happy. Like I said before, it might not be the life that you wanted, but you can find joy and happiness and peace. You can find peace, but it can come at a cost. It can come at a cost, but just keep pushing through. It will. I've had to say a lot of goodbyes the past couple years because my peace and my mental health are top priority. So, and for anybody listening, you can do the same. Please prioritize yourself and know that it's all
Yeah,
going to be okay. That was
yeah.
like the most
I
random. They're probably like, click,
No!
next message.
please press 2 no.
to re-record.
No, but that's so one of the things that I love about this is that every message is unique and every message
Yeah.
is very unique to you, right? And the fun part, I keep
Yeah.
saying this, but the fun part is to get your message, you're going to have to listen to the episode before yours and see if it resonates with you. It's kind of
Right.
a fun little
Oh, I like
experiment.
that.
So,
That
right?
is.
It may
I
or
like
may not
that.
resonate. We'll see. But yeah, Caralyn, just thank you so much. This has been such a joy. We've covered some really, really heavy topics, but you were able to convey them in a way that is relatable, that is digestible, and that also provides hope. And I really appreciate you spending time with me this morning.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I've had a great time. We did touch on some heavy stuff, but I really have enjoyed myself. I enjoyed the conversation, and you're doing amazing, amazing things. And if you ever have
You.
those hard days where you feel like you're not doing enough, nobody sees you, nobody hears you, we do, and we appreciate you.
Oh
I
my
almost
gosh.
got
Okay,
teary-eyed
I
there,
know
but
you're gonna make
seriously.
me cry. You're gonna make me
Oh, but
cry.
seriously, you are
Oh,
appreciated. You are appreciated. You are.
oh, thank you so much. Wow, Caralyn, thank you so much. I really appreciate your vulnerability in sharing things you'd never shared before. I hope Carolyn's message resonates with you. Remember, you are worthy of care no matter what, and no matter what that looks like. To connect with Caralyn and follow her journey, her links are in the show notes, but like she said, you can find her on pretty much any social media platform. And to our listeners, if this episode helped you feel seen or validated, please follow Quiet Connection on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Substack. For exclusive content, early access, and to support the mission of breaking cycles, check out our Patreon and our Substack. You'll find links to everything in the show notes. If you'd like to share your journey or just connect for solidarity or resources, you can reach me at my website, quietconnectionpodcast.com, or by email at chelsea@quietconnectionpodcast.com. Join us next time when another story is told and you realize you are not alone. I see you.